My sister banned my scarred daughter from her wedding photos because I refused to co-sign her $80,000 loan. She laughed, thinking she had all the power. She forgot I held the venue's deposit. So, I made one phone call and canceled her dream wedding instantly. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The exhaustion I felt wasn't just in my bones, it was in the very marrow of my existence, a heavy, leaden weight that made lifting my coffee cup feel like a feat of strength. I sat at my kitchen island, the granite cool against my forearms, staring blankly at the pile of medical bills that had arrived that morning. They weren't unmanageable. I was a successful landscape architect, after all, but they were a constant, nagging reminder of the fragility of the life I had built for myself and my daughter, Maya. Maya was asleep upstairs, finally resting after a grueling week of consultations with the reconstructive surgeon. It had been 4 years since the accident, 4 years since the car crash that had taken my husband and left my beautiful, vibrant 6-year-old with a jagged, angry scar running from her left temple down to her jawline. We had learned to live with it, to navigate the stares of strangers and the cruel whispers of children on the playground, but the emotional toll was cumulative. Every time I looked at her, I saw a survivor, a warrior. But I also saw the pain she tried so hard to hide when she thought I wasn't looking. I rubbed my temples, trying to massage away the migraine that had been building behind my eyes since noon. The house was quiet, a rare moment of peace in a life that often felt like a series of managed crises. I took a sip of the lukewarm coffee, savoring the bitterness. Then my phone buzzed against the granite, the vibration loud and startling in the silence. I looked down, Chloe. My younger sister, the golden child, the bride-to-be. I hesitated before answering. Conversations with Chloe lately had become a minefield of demands and veiled criticisms, centered entirely around her upcoming wedding of the century. But if I didn't answer, she would call Mom, and then Barbara, our mother, would call me in a panic, asking why I was being distant and unsupportive. I swiped right. Hey Chloe, everything okay? Juliet, finally, her voice shrilled through the speaker, breathless and agitated. I've been trying to reach you for 10 minutes. Where have you been? I've been here, sitting in my kitchen, I said, keeping my voice level. I just put Maya to bed. She had a rough day with the surgeon. Oh, Chloe said, the syllable flat, devoid of any real concern. She didn't ask how the appointment went. She didn't ask how Maya was feeling. She just pivoted, as she always did, back to the only subject that mattered, herself. Well, listen, I need you to come over for dinner tonight. Philip and I have something huge to discuss with you. Mom is coming too. Chloe, I can't, I sighed, looking at the clock. It was nearly 6. Maya is sleeping, and I don't want to wake her up to drag her across town. Plus, I'm exhausted. Get a sitter, Chloe snapped, the sweetness in her voice evaporating instantly. Juliet, this is an emergency, a wedding emergency. You're the maid of honor. You can't just bail on me when I'm in crisis. What kind of crisis? I asked, my guard going up. Is everyone okay? It's about the financing, she said, her voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. The bank is being difficult. They don't understand the vision, Juliet. They're looking at numbers, not art. Philip and I need you to come over and look at the paperwork. You're good with contracts and money and stuff. Please, for me. I closed my eyes. The financing. I knew this was coming. Chloe and Philip, a man whose ambition was only outmatched by his unemployment history, were planning a wedding that rivaled a royal coronation. I had already contributed significantly. I had put down the initial $15,000 deposit on the venue, the sprawling, historic Rosewood estate, 6 months ago. It was supposed to be my gift, a way to help her secure the date. Chloe, I started, I really don't think I can help with the bank. Just come for dinner, she pressed. Mom is already on her way. She's bringing lasagna. Just bring Maya if you have to. She can play on the iPad in the guest room. Please, Juliet, I'm hyperventilating here. I looked at the phone, feeling that familiar tug of familial obligation. This was the dynamic. Chloe created a storm, and I was expected to bring the umbrella. "Fine," I whispered, a decision I would regret for the rest of my life. "I'll wake Maya up. We'll be there in an hour." "Thank God," she said, her voice instantly bright again. "You're the best sister. Ever. See you soon." She hung up before I could say another word. I stared at the black screen of my phone, a knot forming in my stomach that had nothing to do with hunger. I had a feeling this wasn't just about looking at paperwork. I had a feeling I was walking into a trap. But as I walked upstairs to gently wake my sleeping daughter, watching her innocent face relaxed in slumber, I had no idea that the betrayal awaiting me wasn't just about money. It was going to be an attack on the one thing I loved more than life itself. The betrayal waiting for me at that dinner table would be worse than the diagnosis, worse than the accident. It would be a calculated strike at my child's dignity. The atmosphere at Chloe and Philip's apartment was thick enough to choke on. Despite the smell of Barbara's lasagna wafting from the oven, a scent that usually brought me comfort, my stomach was turning flips. Maya was sitting in the living room, wearing her oversized headphones and watching a documentary on her tablet. She had tried to say hello when we walked in, but Chloe had barely glanced at her, offering a distracted wave before ushering me into the dining room. Philip was already there, pouring wine with a hand that shook slightly. He was a handsome man in a generic, catalog model sort of way, but his eyes always seemed to be scanning the room for an exit or a mirror. "So," I said, taking my seat across from Barbara, who offered me a tight, anxious smile. "What is this emergency regarding the bank?" Chloe sat at the head of the table, clasping her hands together as if in prayer. "Okay, so here's the situation. The wedding budget has expanded, slightly." "Expanded how much?" I asked, reaching for my water glass. "Well," Philip piped up, his voice overly smooth, "we realized that the standard floral package at Rosewood was just tragic. I mean, carnations, Juliet. It's an insult to the venue. And the photographer we wanted, the one who shot the senator's wedding, he just doubled his rate, but we need him. He's the only one who understands natural light." "Philip is right," Chloe nodded vigorously. "And then there's the catering. We can't serve chicken, it's pedestrian. We upgraded to the surf and turf option, and we added a raw bar." I did the mental math. "Okay, and what does that bring the total to?" Chloe bit her lip. "We're about $80,000 short." I nearly choked on my water. 80,000? Chloe, that's a down payment on a house. That's an entire college education. You're over budget by $80,000. "It's an investment," she insisted, her eyes widening. "The photos, the video, this is for life, Juliet. It's our brand. Philip and I are launching our lifestyle channel next month, and this wedding is our launch event. We need it to be perfect." "Okay," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice calm. "So you need to cut costs. Cut the raw bar, go back to the chicken, find a different photographer." "We can't." Philip slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. "We've already announced the vendors on social media. We can't backtrack now. It would look humiliating." "So what do you want from me?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Chloe slid a thick folder across the table. "The bank approved a personal consolidation loan to cover the gap. But because Philip is technically between opportunities right now and my credit score is, well, you know, they need a cosigner. Someone with assets. Someone with a solid financial history." She looked at me with big, pleading doe eyes. "Just a signature, Juliet. That's all. We'll pay the monthly installments. You won't have to pay a dime. We just need your credit rating to unlock the funds." I looked at the document, $80,000. Interest rate, 12%. "No," I said firmly. The room went silent. Barbara gasped softly. "What do you mean, no?" Chloe asked, her voice dropping an octave. "I mean no, I will not co-sign an $80,000 loan for a party," I said, pushing the folder back. "Chloe, I love you, but this is insanity. You can't afford this. If you miss a payment, and let's be honest, you likely will, the bank comes after me. They come after my house. They come after Maya's college fund. I can't risk my daughter's future for a raw bar. It's not for a raw bar, Chloe screeched, standing up. It's for my happiness. You have so much money, Juliet. You have the firm, the house, the insurance payout from the accident. You're sitting on a pile of cash and you won't help your own sister. That money is for Maya, I said, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. It's for her surgeries, for her future. It is not for you to impress strangers on Instagram. Girls, please, Barbara intervened, wringing her hands. Juliet, maybe there's a compromise. Can't you just sign it? Philip says his new venture is going to be huge. They'll pay it back in no time. No, Mom, I said, looking at her. Directly, I won't do it. Chloe stared at me, her face turning a mottled red. She looked at Philip, who sneered and took a long drink of wine. Then, a cold, malicious calculation entered Chloe's eyes. She sat back down slowly, smoothing her napkin on her lap. Fine, she said, her voice eerily calm. If you can't support the vision, then we have to make some cuts. We have to protect the aesthetic. She picked up her fork and stabbed a piece of lettuce. Speaking of the aesthetic, Philip and I were talking. We think it's best if Maya isn't in the wedding party anymore. I froze. What? The flower girl role, Chloe said casually, not looking me in the eye. We're cutting it. Actually, we think it's best if Maya doesn't come to the ceremony at all. Maybe she can stay with a sitter. You're uninviting my 10-year-old daughter, I whispered. Your niece. It's not that we don't love her, Philip added, smirking as he swirled his wine. It's just the photos, Juliet. This is a black tie, high-end event. We're going for flawless. And Maya, well, let's be real, her face is distracting. It draws the eye. We can't have the photographer spending hours editing out that scar in every group shot. She'll ruin the photos. I felt the blood drain from my face. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked at Barbara, waiting for her to scream, to slap them, to do something. Barbara just looked down at her plate. Juliet, she murmured, it is her special day. Maybe it would be less stressful for Maya to stay home. She does get anxious in crowds. She's 10, I said, my voice trembling. She has been practicing throwing those petals for months. She bought a new dress. She thinks she's beautiful. She's a sweet kid, Chloe said, waving her hand dismissively. But she doesn't belong at our wedding. Not with that situation on her face. It's just branding, Juliet. Don't take it so personally. Philip chuckled. Yeah, think of the comments section. We're doing her a favor, really. Then they laughed. Chloe giggled, a light, airy sound. Philip laughed, a deep, mocking guffaw. Even Barbara let out a nervous, tittering sound, trying to smooth over the tension by joining in. The whole table laughed like it was a joke. Like my daughter's trauma was a minor inconvenience to their color palette. I looked at them. I looked at my sister, whose diapers I had changed. I looked at my mother, who was supposed to protect her grandchildren. I looked at Philip, a man living on borrowed dime. Something inside me snapped, but it wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet, metallic click of a lock engaging. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table. I just smiled. It was a terrifyingly calm smile. I see, I said softly. You're right. Weddings are about revealing true colors, and you've certainly shown yours. Exactly, Chloe beamed, thinking she had won. I knew you'd understand eventually, so we're good. No hard feelings. No hard feelings, I lied, my voice smooth as glass. I stood up, picking up my purse. I'm going to take Maya home now, enjoy the lasagna. As I walked away, leaving them celebrating their victory, my hand brushed against the cool leather of my wallet inside my purse. Inside that wallet sat a sleek, black credit card. The card that was currently authorized as the guarantor for the Rosewood estate. They were so focused on the loan I refused to sign, they had forgotten one crucial thing. I was the one who had signed the contract for the venue 6 months ago. I was the one holding the keys to their kingdom. The drive home was silent. Maya had fallen asleep in the backseat again, oblivious to the fact that her aunt had just deemed her unworthy of being seen. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, the leather creaking under the pressure of my fury. As the streetlights blurred past, my mind drifted back, replaying the years of sacrifices I had made for Chloe. It wasn't just the money, though there had been plenty of that. It was the emotional labor. When our father died 10 years ago, Barbara had collapsed into a state of permanent helplessness. I was 28, just starting my firm, grieving my dad, and suddenly I was the head of the household. Chloe was 16, a rebellious, angst-filled teenager. I paid for her braces. I paid for her prom dress. When she crashed her first car because she was texting, I paid the deductible and kept it from Mom so she wouldn't have a panic attack. I had spent my entire adult life buffering Chloe from the consequences of her own actions. I had convinced myself I was being a good big sister. I told myself that she was just spirited, that she would grow out of it. But she hadn't grown out of it, she had grown into it. And now there was Philip. I had met Philip 8 months ago at a gallery opening. He was charming in a vacuous way, wearing a suit that cost more than my first car and talking Lou. DLY about crypto assets and disrupting the market. He claimed to be an entrepreneur, but in the time I'd known him, I'd never seen him actually work. He spent his days at the gym and his nights at exclusive clubs, dragging Chloe along in his wake. He was the catalyst. Before Philip, Chloe was selfish, yes, but she wasn't cruel. Philip had introduced her to this toxic world of aesthetics and personal branding. He had convinced her that she was a celebrity in waiting and that everyone around her, me, Mom, even Maya, were just props in her reality show. I glanced in the rearview mirror at Maya's sleeping face. The scar was visible in the passing light of a street lamp. It was the result of a drunk driver T-boning us. I remembered the screaming. I remembered the blood. I remembered holding her hand in the ICU while she cried, asking if she was a monster. I had spent 4 years building her confidence back up brick by brick. I had told her every single day that her scar was a line of courage, that she was beautiful, that she mattered. And Chloe, my own sister, wanted to erase her because she didn't match the floral arrangements. I pulled into my driveway and turned off the engine. The silence of the car felt heavy. The text message came through just as I was unbuckling my seatbelt. It was from Chloe. "Thanks for not making a scene tonight. Love you. Also, can you send the contact info for your florist friend? Philip thinks we can maybe squeeze a discount out of him if we mention your name. Zoxo." I stared at the screen. The audacity was breathtaking. She had just insulted my child, and now she wanted to use my professional connections to save money on the wedding she had banned my child from. She truly believed she was untouchable. She believed that because I was Big Sister Juliet, the responsible one, the doormat, I would just swallow the insult and keep helping her. She thought I was bound by blood to accept her abuse. But she didn't know about the clause in the Rosewood contract. When I had put down the deposit, the venue manager, a stern woman named Mrs. Higgins, had been very clear. The primary cardholder is the legal owner of the reservation until the final balance is paid in full 30 days prior to the event. The cardholder retains the right to modify or cancel the event at any time. The wedding was in 3 weeks. The final balance hadn't been paid, that's what the loan was for, which meant the reservation was still technically under my control. I looked at the text message again. "Love you," she had written. "I love you too, Chloe," I whispered to the empty car. "I love you enough to finally teach you the lesson Mom never did." I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg her to include Maya. I was going to destroy the stage she planned to stand on. I carried Maya upstairs, her small body heavy and warm against my chest, a stark contrast to the cold, hollow feeling that had settled in my stomach. I tucked her into her bed, brushing a strand of dark hair away from the scar that traversed her cheek. In the soft glow of her nightlight, she looked peaceful, untouched by the cruelty her own aunt had just unleashed. I kissed her forehead, lingering for a moment to breathe in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, grounding myself before I walked back into the battlefield. I didn't go to sleep. Instead, I went straight to my home office, a converted sunroom that overlooked the garden. I sat at my mahogany desk and opened my laptop, the screen's blue light illuminating the room like a sterile interrogation lamp. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from a potent cocktail of adrenaline and sorrow. I allowed myself 5 minutes to cry. I put my head in my hands and sobbed for the sister I had lost, for the little girl who used to braid my hair and promise we'd always be best friends. I mourned her. And then I wiped my face, straightened my spine, and turned into the woman who ran a successful firm. I was Juliet the sister anymore. I was Juliet the architect, and I was looking at a structural failure that needed to be demolished. I pulled up the contract for the Rosewood estate. I had a digital copy saved in my family folder, a folder that felt increasingly ironic. I scanned the fine print, my eyes darting over the clauses until I found Article 7, Section B. The primary financial guarantor retains sole authority over the reservation until the final balance is cleared. Any modifications, up to and including cancellation, must be authorized by the guarantor. I checked the guarantor line. There was my signature. There was my credit card number. Then I logged into my online banking. I wanted to check my credit limit, just to be sure, but what I saw made my blood run cold. There was a pending transaction from Rosewood Events, dated yesterday, the day before the dinner. Amount $80,000. Status: declined, suspected fraud. I stared at the screen, my mouth falling open. They hadn't just asked for a loan because they were short on cash. They had tried to charge the entire balance to my card without asking me. The only reason it hadn't gone through was because my bank's fraud algorithm had flagged a charge that large as suspicious. The dinner, the lasagna, the sob story about the vision, it was all damage control. They knew the charge had bounced. They were trying to get me to co-sign a loan to cover the theft they had attempted to commit. "You greedy little vultures," I whispered, a fresh wave of fury replacing the sorrow. I picked up my phone. It was 10:30 p.m. I dialed a number I hadn't used in a while. David. He was a forensic accountant I worked with on commercial disputes, a man who could find a missing penny in a billion-dollar merger. "Juliet," his voice was groggy. "It's late. Is everything okay?" "No, David, I need a favor, a big one, and I need it by tomorrow morning." "Okay," he said, instantly alert. "Who are we looking at?" "Philip Sterling," I said, saying the name like a curse word. "My sister's fiancé. He claims to be an entrepreneur in crypto assets. I need to know everything. Debts, lawsuits, credit history, shell companies, dig deep." "Philip Sterling," David repeated, the sound of a keyboard clacking in the background. "I'm on it. I'll have a preliminary dossier for you by 8:00 a.m. "Thank you," I said. "And David, charge me your rush rate. I don't care what it costs." I hung up. Then I opened my email client. I composed a new message to Mrs. Higgins at Rosewood Estate. I attached a copy of my ID and a scan of the credit card to prove my identity. Subject: urgent cancellation of reservation, 4492. Dear Mrs. Higgins, as the primary financial guarantor for the wedding of Chloe Vance and Philip Sterling scheduled for the 18th, I am exercising my right under Article 7 to cancel this event effective immediately. Furthermore, I am formally revoking authorization for the credit card ending in 4092. Any further attempts to charge this card will be reported to the authorities as fraud. Please remove this card from your file instantly. Please send the cancellation confirmation to the email, addresses on file for the bride and groom. Regards, Juliet Vance. I hovered my mouse over the send button. I thought about Maya's face. I thought about the laughter at the dinner table. I thought about the aesthetic that my daughter wasn't good enough for. I click send. The swoosh sound of the email departing was the most satisfying sound I had heard in years. I closed the laptop, walked to the kitchen, poured the rest of the wine down the sink, and went to bed. I slept like a baby. I was in the kitchen making pancakes when my phone exploded. It was 7:15 a.m. Maya was sitting at the counter, blissfully unaware, humming to herself as she drowned her pancakes in syrup. The phone on the counter was vibrating so violently it was slowly dancing across the marble surface. Chloe calling. I let it ring. I took a sip of my coffee, flipped a pancake, and watched the screen light up again, and again, and again. By the fourth call, I decided the suspense had marinated long enough. I picked up the phone and walked into the living room, sliding the glass door shut so Maya wouldn't hear. "Good morning," I said, my voice bright and cheery. "What did you do?" Chloe's scream was so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. It was a guttural, animalistic shriek of pure panic. "I'm making pancakes," I said calmly. "Did you need the recipe?" "Don't play dumb with me, Juliet," she sobbed, the sound hysterical. "I just got an email from Rosewood. They said the wedding is canceled. They said the payment method was revoked. They said the date has already been released to the waitlist." "Oh, that," I said, examining a fingernail. "Yes, I did that." "Why?" she screamed. "Are you insane? You ruined my life, you ruined everything. How could you be so jealous and petty?" "Petty?" I let out a low, dark laugh. "Chloe, let's be clear. You told me last night that my daughter, your own niece, was too ugly to be in your photos. You told me she would ruin the aesthetic." I simply agreed with you. "I never said she was ugly," Chloe backtracked, her voice shrill. "I said she was distracting. There's a difference." "Not to a mother, there isn't," I snapped, dropping the facade. "But here, the reality check, Chloe. You wanted a perfect aesthetic. You wanted a wedding that looked like a magazine spread. Well, I paid the deposit for that venue. I was the financial guarantor. And since my family isn't aesthetic enough to attend, I figured my money wasn't aesthetic enough to pay for it." You can't do this," she stammered, her voice trembling with shock. "I've already sent the invites. People are booking flights. Philip has investors coming." "Ah, yes, the investors," I said. "Put Philip on the phone." He's throwing up in the bathroom, Chloe." He cried. "Put him on now." There was a fumbling sound, some muffled arguing, and then Philip's voice came on the line. He didn't sound smooth or charming anymore. He sounded terrified and aggressive, like a cornered rat. "Listen here, Juliet," he snarled. "You're going to call that venue back right now and tell them it was a mistake. If you don't, I'll sue you for breach of contract. I'll sue you for emotional distress. I'll ruin your reputation in this town." "You'll sue me?" I asked, keeping my voice dangerously low. "With what money, Philip? The money you tried to steal from my credit card yesterday." There was a dead silence on the line. "I know about the $80,000 charge, Philip," I continued, pressing the advantage. "I saw the decline notice. You tried to max out my card before you even asked for the loan. That's attempted credit card fraud. It's a felony. So, if you want to talk about lawyers, I'd be happy to. I can have the police at your door in 20 minutes. "It was a mistake," Philip shouted, his voice cracking. "The venue ran the card by accident. It wasn't me." "Liar," I said simply. "Mrs. Higgins told me the authorization form was submitted digitally yesterday morning, from an IP address that matches your apartment." "Philip, what is she talking about?" Chloe's voice piped up in the background, sounding small and confused. "You said the bank made a mistake." "She's lying, Chloe," Philip yelled, but the desperation in his voice was palpable. "She's just trying to sabotage us because she's a bitter, lonely widow who can't stand to see you happy." The insult stung, but it was a dull pain compared to the clarity I now possessed. "Fix this, Juliet," Philip demanded, trying to regain control. "Rebook the venue, now, or you'll never see your sister again." "I think I'm okay with that," I said. "The wedding is canceled, Philip, and if you try to contact me or my daughter again, I will file a restraining order and I will press charges for the attempted fraud. Have a nice life." I hung up the phone. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I felt lighter, as if 100-pound weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I walked back into the kitchen. Maya looked up, her face sticky with syrup. "Who was on the phone, Mommy?" "Just a wrong number, baby," I smiled, kissing the top of her head. "Just a wrong number." But I knew it wasn't over. Men like Philip didn't go down without a fight, and sisters like Chloe didn't let go of their delusions easily. The silence lasted exactly 2 hours. Then, the flying monkeys arrived. I was in my study, reviewing the preliminary report David had sent over, when I heard the tires crunching on my gravel driveway. I looked out the window to see my mother's sedan swerving to a halt. Barbara exploded out of the car, looking disheveled, her usually perfect hair windblown. She didn't knock. She used the emergency key I had given her years ago and burst into the hallway. "Juliet," she screamed. "Juliet, where are you?" I met her in the foyer. "I'm here, Mom. Please lower your voice. Maya is reading." Barbara looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. She looked like she had aged 10 years in a single morning. "How could you? Chloe is hysterical. She's on the floor, Juliet. She can't breathe. You canceled her wedding on a whim." "It wasn't a whim, Mom," I said, crossing my arms. "And it wasn't her wedding. It was my reservation, which I paid for, and which they tried to defraud me to upgrade." "It's just money," Barbara cried, waving her hands. "We're talking about family. We're talking about her reputation. Do you know what she's doing right now? She's on Instagram Live, Juliet. She's telling everyone that a jealous family member sabotaged her big day. People are commenting. They're saying horrible things." I felt a cold prickle of dread. She's doing what? I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram. There was the notification, "Chloe V Lifestyle is live." I clicked on it. Chloe was sitting on her floor, mascara running down her face, wearing a perfectly ripped oversized hoodie. The viewer count was climbing, 3,000 people. I don't understand how someone could be so cruel," Chloe was sobbing into the camera. "We tried so hard to include everyone. We tried to be so accommodating. And this person, she just pulled the plug because she couldn't handle the spotlight being on me for one day. She used her money to control me. It's financial abuse, guys. It really is." Comments were flying up the screen. At GlamGirl99, "OMG, that is so toxic. Cut her off." At BossBabe22, "Name and shame, sis. Who is this monster?" At Philip the King, "We will rise above this babe. The truth will come out." "She's playing the victim," I said, showing the screen to Mom. "She's lying to thousands of strangers to protect her ego." "She's hurting," Barbara defended her. "She's lashing out because she's in pain. Juliet, please be the bigger person. Fix this." "Philip says if you reinstate the booking today, they can still save the date. He says he can get investors to cover the rest if you just co-sign the guarantee. Just sign the paper, Juliet. For me, please, I can't handle the fighting." "Mom," I said, my voice hard, "stop." I walked over to my desk and picked up the file David had sent. I thrust it into Barbara's hands. "Read this." "What is it?" she asked, looking at the manila folder like it was a bomb. "It's Philip's background check," I said. "Read page 3. Barbara hesitated, then opened the folder. She adjusted her reading glasses. As she read, her face went pale. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Philip isn't an entrepreneur," I explained, reciting the facts I had just memorized. "He's a defendant. He has 3 active judgments against him for unpaid loans totaling $200,000. He was sued by an ex-fiancée in Chicago 2 years ago for conversion of funds. He convinced her to take out a loan for a wedding, spent it on a luxury car and gambling debts, and then left her a week before the ceremony." Barbara looked up at me, trembling. "Gambling debts." "The $80,000 wasn't for a raw bar, Mom," I said. "It was for a bookie in Vegas. He has a court date next month. If he doesn't pay, he goes to jail for violating his probation. He was using Chloe. He was using me. The wedding was never going to happen. He was going to take the loan money and run." "Does Chloe know?" Barbara asked, her voice barely audible. I don't know, I said, but we're going to find out. I took the folder back. I'm not reinstating the wedding. I'm going to save my sister, even if she hates me for it. She's coming here, Barbara whispered. She and Philip, they're on their way. Philip said he was going to force you to see reason. He sounded scary, Juliet. Let them come, I said, walking to the drawer where I kept the old family photo albums and my spare set of house keys. But they aren't coming inside. I picked up my phone and texted David again. Send the full certified court documents to my printer. Now. Then I texted my neighbor, Tom, who was a retired police sergeant. Tom, I might need you to stand on your porch for a bit. Trouble incoming. I looked at my mother, who was sobbing softly on the entryway bench. Mom, you have a choice. You can stay here and back me up, or you can go outside and stand with them. But you need to decide right now whose side you're on. The daughter who pays your bills and protects your granddaughter, or the con artist who is about to destroy this family. Barbara looked at me, fear warring with loyalty. Then she took a deep breath. She stood up and walked over to stand beside me. She linked her arm through mine. He called Maya a monster, she asked, her voice quiet. He said she would ruin the photos, I corrected. No, Barbara said, her jaw setting in a way I hadn't seen in years. No one talks about my granddaughter that way. Tires screeched in the driveway again. This time it was aggressive. A car door slammed. Juliet, Philip's voice roared from outside. Open this door, we're not done. I looked at Mom. I looked at the folder in my hand. Showtime, I whispered. The pounding on the front door was so violent the stained glass inserts rattled in their frames. Philip wasn't knocking. He was trying to batter his way in. Open the damn door, Juliet. I know you're in there. I looked at my mother. Barbara's face was pale, her hands trembling, but she nodded at me. She was ready. I checked the hallway mirror one last time. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like a prosecutor. I unlocked the deadbolt and threw the door open. Philip was standing on the porch, his face flushed a deep, ugly crimson. He was wearing a designer suit that looked slept in, his tie loosened, sweat beading on his forehead. Behind him, Chloe stood near the railing, holding her phone up, the red live icon visible on the screen. She was filming me. Finally, Philip shouted, stepping forward. You have 5 seconds to call the venue and fix this mess, or I swear to God. Or you'll what? I asked, stepping out onto the porch to meet him. I didn't retreat, I took up space. You'll sue me. With whose lawyer, Philip? The one defending you in your fraud case in Nevada, or the one in Chicago? Philip froze. The color drained from his face instantly, leaving him a sickly shade of gray. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. What are you talking about? Chloe asked, her voice wavering. She lowered the phone slightly, but the camera was still rolling. The comments section must have been going wild. I'm talking about your fiancé's extensive resume, Chloe, I said, pitching my voice so it would carry to the phone, and to Tom, my neighbor, who I could see standing on his porch with a mug of coffee, watching intently. I opened the folder. According to the Superior Court of Coup, K County, Philip Sterling, born Philip Stovitz, has 3 outstanding judgments against him. One for $40,000 in credit card debt, one for $60,000 in unpaid personal loans, and the big one, a civil judgment for conversion of funds from a Miss Angela Rossi. Shut up, Philip hissed, stepping closer, his hands balled into fists. Shut your mouth, Juliet. Who is Angela Rossi? Chloe whispered. She was his fiancée 2 years ago, I said, reading from the affidavit. He convinced her to take out a home equity line of credit to pay for their dream wedding. 2 weeks before the date, Philip disappeared, so did the money. Angela lost her house. Philip went to Vegas. That's a lie, Philip screamed, lunging at me. Give me that. Hey, a deep voice boomed from the lawn. Tom, my retired police sergeant neighbor, was suddenly at the bottom of the porch steps. He wasn't holding coffee anymore. He was standing with his arms crossed, looking very large and very unimpressed. Everything okay here, Juliet? Just clearing the air, Tom, I said, not taking my eyes off Philip. Philip stopped mid-lunge, eyeing Tom nervously. I turned my attention back to my sister. Chloe looked like she had been slapped. She was staring at Philip, the phone in her hand shaking violently. "Chloe," I said softly, "the $80,000 he wanted me to co-sign for, it wasn't for the venue. It wasn't for the photographer. It was to pay off a gambling debt he owes to a bookie named Sal in Atlantic City. I have the emails right here." I pulled out the printout of the emails David's team had scraped. I held them up. "He wasn't marrying you for the photos, Chloe," I said, delivering the final blow. "He wasn't marrying you for the aesthetic. He was marrying you because he thought I would pay his debts to keep you happy. He was marrying my credit score." Chloe looked at the papers, then she looked at Philip. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Babe, listen," Philip started, putting on his frantic, charming smile. It looked grotesque now. "She's crazy. She's jealous. These are forged. She's trying to break us up because she's a bitter, lonely." "Is it true?" Chloe screamed, the sound tearing from her throat. Philip's mask slipped. He sneered. "You know what, Chloe? Who cares? You think you're such a prize. You're a broke, high-maintenance princess with no job and a mountain of credit card debt. I was doing you a favor. I was going to make us famous." "You were stealing from my family?" Chloe shrieked. She raised her hand and slapped him hard. The sound cracked through the morning air like a gunshot. "You little," Philip snarled, raising his fist. "Take one more step, son, and you'll be eating gravel," Tom growled from the stairs. He hadn't moved, but his presence was a wall of iron. Philip looked at Tom, he looked at me, he looked at the folder in my hand. He realized the game was over. The investors weren't coming. The money wasn't coming. The trap had snapped shut. "You're all crazy," Philip spat. "I'm out of here. Good luck paying for the cancellation fees, sweetheart." He turned and stomped down the stairs, pushing past Tom, and ran to his car. He peeled out of the driveway, tires screeching, leaving a cloud of exhaust in his wake. Chloe stood on the porch, trembling. She looked down at her phone. The live stream was still running. Thousands of people had just watched her fiancé admit he was using her. They had watched him threaten her. She tapped the screen, ending the broadcast. Then her legs gave out. She collapsed onto the porch timber, burying her face in her hands, and began to wail. It wasn't the fake, attention-seeking crying she did for the cameras. This was the deep, ugly sobbing of a woman whose entire world had just been exposed as a fraud. Barbara stepped out from behind the door. She walked over to Chloe and sat down on the dirty porch floor next to her. She wrapped her arms around her youngest daughter and rocked her, just like she used to when we were little. I stood there holding the folder, watching them. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel happy. I just felt tired. But as I looked at the empty driveway where the parasite had just fled, I knew one thing for certain: my family was safe. The fallout was swift, brutal, and surprisingly cleansing. The police picked Philip up 3 days later. It turned out that attempting to charge $80,000 to a card you aren't authorized to use is, in fact, a very serious crime. Combined with the outstanding warrants from Chicago and the probation violation from Nevada, Philip was looking at a significant amount of time in a place where the aesthetic was decidedly gray and metallic. I gave my statement to the detectives with a sense of grim satisfaction. I handed over the emails, the declined transaction record, and the contract. David's dossier became the roadmap for the prosecute. Tian, Philip Sterling wouldn't be scamming any more brides for a long, long time. But the legal victory was the easy part. The family reconstruction was harder. Chloe moved back in with Mom for a while. She was broken. The humiliation of the public breakup, the viral clips of her crying on the porch, the realization that she had almost ruined her life. It stripped away the arrogance she had worn like armor for so long. 2 weeks after the wedding day that never happened, I hosted a dinner at my house. It was quiet, no raw bar, no photographers, just roast chicken, salad, and us. Chloe was quiet for most of the meal. She wasn't on her phone. She looked younger, stripped of the heavy contouring makeup and the influencer persona. She looked like the sister I remembered from before the internet ate her brain. When we finished eating, Chloe cleared her throat. Her hands were shaking as she reached into her bag. "I have something for you," she said to Maya. Maya looked up from her drawing pad, her eyes wary. She had heard what Chloe said that night at the dinner table. Kids hear everything. Chloe pulled out a small, rectangular box. She slid it across the table. Maya opened it. Inside was a delicate silver charm bracelet. The charm was a small, intricate flower, a rose. "It's beautiful," Maya whispered. "I'm sorry," Chloe said, and her voice cracked. She didn't look at me or Mom. She looked directly at Maya. "I'm so sorry for what I said. I was mean, and I was wrong. You are beautiful, Maya. You're the most beautiful girl I know because you're brave. I'm not brave. I was a coward." Maya looked at the bracelet, then at her aunt. She touched the scar on her cheek, a habit she had when she was nervous. "It's okay, Aunt Chloe," Maya said softly. "Mommy says hurt people hurt people." I felt tears prick my eyes. My wise, incredible girl. Chloe burst into tears. She got up and rounded the table, kneeling beside Maya's chair. "Can I have a hug?" Maya hesitated for a second, then threw her arms around Chloe's neck. I looked at Mom. Barbara was crying too, silently, a smile on her face. It wasn't a perfect ending. Chloe still had debts to pay, real debts, not gambling ones, and she had a lot of growing up to do. Our relationship was fragile, like a bone that had broken and was just beginning to knit back together. But it was real. Later that night, after everyone had left, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine. The garden was silent, bathed in moonlight. I thought about the Rosewood estate. I had lost the $15,000 deposit, of course. It was a painful financial hit, but as I listened to the hum of the crickets and thought about Maya sleeping peacefully upstairs, respected and loved, I realized it was the best money I had ever spent. I had paid $15,000 to expose a con man, save my sister from a disastrous marriage, and teach my family that loyalty isn't about blind obedience. It's about standing up for the truth. I took a sip of wine and smiled. The aesthetic of my life wasn't perfect. It was messy and scarred and complicated, but it was mine, and it was beautiful.